Well, good morning, Day Spring. I'm back, and it's now after Thanksgiving. I hope each of your Thanksgivings was a wonderful time. Even if smaller than usual, that it would have been a warm and wondrous time of giving thanks. Now I'm going to reread a passage that we read last week. It'll be quick, so don't get nervous. But it's John 1:1-2. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was fully God. The Word was with God in the beginning. Now I want to introduce a concept, and I'm going to transfer us over in a second to a structure of this, but the concept is a device called chiasm or chiasmus. Chiasm, emphasis where you like. The idea of a chiasm is a literary device that's designed to take a sequence of ideas and repeat them, but to flip them. That is, in the order to flip them. The word chiasm comes from a Greek word chi, which is the idea of A, B, B. And you can kind of see there's a structure going on here, that A, B, B, A structure. And a chiasm can get very, very complicated. It could just be an A, B, C, B, A, or it could be actually A through P and reverse it, or there can be subpoints in it, as long as there's a sense in which there's balance from one end to the other. There is a chiasm at work. Now, why would you use a chiasm? Well, the answer to that, in a pre-literate society, it's not like they didn't write, but the greatest majority of people didn't read. And so much of what you learned, you heard. You heard spoken and you heard taught. And we see that certainly in the life of Jesus, but why do you have a chiasmic structure? Well, for two reasons. One is just for the hearer, so that he can organize ideas in his own mind and know where things fall. He can see the A, B, C, B, A. But also for the teacher, who has a way of hooking ideas into the brain of his hearers. The A, B, C, B, A, or A through whatever complexities or subpoints that go on, multiple subpoints. There is a sense of structure that helps people to know. So you would typically, when you see an A, B, C, B, A, you want to look at the top points and you want to look at the center points out here. Because these and these two are usually the frame of the primary teaching that's going on here. I've tried to break this down so you could kind of see it, so that you would see that there is a 1 and perhaps a 1 prime or an A and an A prime and a series of inset words. Now this is verses 1 and 2, and it's very tightly broken out, very close reading breakout. And you can tell there are some things in the first part, at the start of it, is the phrase "in the beginning," and you know that. We talked about that last time, and even in the Greek, the NRK. And at the very end, you have "in the beginning," at the end of verse 2, the same sort of thing. Now, these are just verses, markings that we've put in for our own sake, but the beginning, in the beginning, and in the beginning. And then there was a past tense was verb. These are very tight readings. This is word by word. Was the Logos. And the Logos was with God. And the word theos is repeated. So you have the NRK, logos, theos, logos, which logos was in the beginning. So you have an A, B, C, D, E, F, and backwards back to A again, if you will, and that kind of structure. So in the center of this, of course, is the notion of divine activity, okay? God is the divine activity. The other end is in the beginning. And the in the beginning is designed, as you remember, to do two things. One is to call us to a cosmic beginning, but also to call us back to Genesis 1. Not just the beginning of creation, but all the way back to the cosmic pre-Genesis. In that beginning was the Word, and the Word was divine. And I emphasize that. Emphasis isn't just that the Word was God, but the Word was itself divine. And then focus back all the way back to the end, to end where it began, in the beginning. So you got a kind of an example of what a chiasm looks like on a very tight reading. I want to do a couple things. I want to initially read the text as a whole, the 18 verses together. And then I want to go back onto the board back here and see how it structures out for us and where the center and outside points are. But I want you to bear with me to read the text. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was fully God. We've said that repeatedly already. The Word was with God in the beginning. All things were created by him, and apart from him, not one thing was created that has been created. In him was life, and the life was the light of mankind. And the light shines on in the darkness, but the darkness has not mastered it. A man sent from God, whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify about the light, so that everyone might believe through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify about the light. The true light, who gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was created by him, but the world did not recognize him. He came to what was his own people. They did not receive him. But to all who have received him, those who believe in his name, he has given the right to become God's children. Children not born by human parents or by human desire or a husband's decision, but by God. Now, the Word became flesh and took up residence among us. We saw his glory, the glory of the one and only, full of grace and truth, who came from the Father. John testified about him and shouted out, "This one was the one about whom I said, 'He who comes after me is greater than I am,' because he existed before me. For we have all received from his fullness one gracious gift after another." Some translations have grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came about through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, the only one, himself divine, who is in closest fellowship with the Father, has made God known. Now I want to structure this again back into the chart I made back here. And as I suggested earlier, you want to be looking at the top and the bottom and the center points and watch the progress as it heads there. And in point number 1 and 1 prime, if you will, I could use A or B, or this is 1 and 1 prime, begins in verses 1 and 2 about the Word that was with God. That's a big deal here. By the way, I've recorded this a couple times so you can see ink and stuff like that. With God. And down here also with God. That's the thrust here. So that person is with the divine being. Now, we're told in verse 18 that he actually explains. It's the word exegete. It means to explain, to lead out of the text to help make it understandable. He explains God, he's with God, and the result is he explains God to us. Everything that God is to us, we see in the Son who explains him. Then the language of through him, through the Logos, through him, is creation. Nothing that came into being didn't come into being with him. But in the second part, the through him language this time is what I'm going to call recreation. That is, in this case, grace upon grace, and the sense of verse 17 has much more the idea that grace and truth have come through Jesus Christ. For John, the foundation of life, of spiritual life, is now all of creation, recreation is life, light, truth, and grace all come through him. Got it? The third section has to do with the blessings that come through, specifically in this case, light and life. Again, as I said, full of grace, grace upon grace. And then, rather obvious to me, the testimony of John, John testified to him. He was not, in fact, the light, but he testified to him that you might believe. Down here again, you have a reference to the testimony of John again. And then particularly 9 to 11 and verse 14, these are 5 and 5 prime, if you will. The Word came into the world. And very broadly, it's the topic of incarnation. In verse 14, the Word came into the world and literally tented. He set up his tent and dwelt among us. And we'll look at that at some future point. Pretty critical. And then the very center point here is this one, verse 12 and 13, it's 6. It's the center point, if you would. If the beginning has to do with the identity of who the Son is, the Logos himself being with God and divine himself, right in the very face of God, and explaining him to us, this middle point is that we get a chance to believe in the Word. And the language of this text in front of here is all who receive them, who believe in his name, he has given the right to become children not born by human parents. So to receive is picked up from, receive is picked up from, it's picked up from verse 11, with the Jews who did not receive him, but instead those who do receive him, which he points out is to believe in the Word, will become children. And I can't overemphasize this notion. We have a huge cosmic issue going on here. This Jesus comes and is at the cosmic level. A lot of references to the realm of darkness. Early on we saw the light of life was the light of mankind. The light shines in the darkness. The darkness has not mastered it. It cannot overwhelm it. It can't subvert it. And so we're actually dealing with cosmic truths here. But in the middle of all this, we have this language of children. This very fundamental picture of family. The whole family structure is not simply church as an institution, but it's brothers and sisters in a family that happen to be what we call the church. It's not just an institution, but it is really a family, and that's pretty critical. So at the very center point of this whole thing, you have these two endpoints of who the Son is and what he's going to do, with the center point being this topic of belief and believe in the Word. If you believe in the Word, you get to become children of God. There's not much doubt that in this book, the central theme is the invitation for all to be part of the family. Now, you may be part of the family, but you need to get better into the family, if you will. More central to the family. The family becomes critical. And so you're going to hear, I will talk about this at another point, but this language of being a child of God, not just Jewish, but also Jew and Gentile, being brought into this very center point of being the family of God because of belief. Now I'm going to take a break real quick here and then pop over another venue, and I'm going to finish this out. Hello again. In this last section, I'm going to change my venue a little bit. Frankly, the sun was getting in my eyes and I couldn't see things well from the room I was in. With the chiasm we talked about, we looked at the endpoints and we look at the middle point. I want to pick up on them very briefly. The endpoints being a reference to the Logos, the divinity of that Logos, and the fact that he is in close contact with God himself. And because he's in the very presence of God, he actually can explain him to us. And then if those are the bookends, the center point, if you will, the center point of that chiasm, the center point is this notion that those who receive the Logos, which is to say those who believe in the Logos, they welcome the Logos, and not only the Logos, but what he teaches in order to be children of the Logos. That notion of kinship is a big deal. And I want to take a look at that really quickly. In John 8, he says to those who are listening, "If you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples. And you'll know the truth will set you free." A well-known passage. But the response is interesting because they appeal to their lineage. They answered him and said, "We are offspring of Abraham and have never been enslaved to anyone. How is it you say you'll become free?" He says, "I know that you're offspring of Abraham, yet you seek to kill me because my word finds no place in you. I speak of what I have seen with my father, You do what you have heard from your father. Hear the my father, your father language going on. All part of kinship, all part of lineage. The answer is that Abraham is our father. He says, if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works that Abraham did, but now you seek to kill me, a man who's told you the truth. You, in verse 41, are doing the works your father did. And they say, we were not born of sexual immorality. We have one Father, even God. Jesus said, if God were your father, you would love me. You are of your father, the devil. Verse 44. Your will is to do the Father's desires. Whoever is of God, that is, of rightly related with God, family-wise, whoever is of God, hears the words of God. The reason why you don't hear them is that you are not of God. Now, Jesus has gotten very cosmic at this point. In other words, with the mention of the devil and God as his father, the tone of the discussion gets quite serious. But there's two really kind of ideas that come out of this. One is that while the Jews had the Word of God, they knew it very well. They were, in fact, not children. They had a father who was the devil. Pretty nasty language, to be honest with you. They needed something other than simply having the Word, which leads us to the latter part of that very same passage, which suggests that they would respond in faith to the Word. The response then would, of course, signal that they were a family member. You don't do the right deeds. You are not hearing the Word. You are not doing the Word. And he's going to say that you have a father of the devil. You are not the father of, your father is not God. You are, in fact, of another father. Very cosmic in scope, which leads us right back into chapter 1. As many as received him, unlike those who didn't receive him, those who believed in him, who welcomed him, to them he gave the right to become children of God. Conclusion then is this language. The invitation to us is, where are we? What are you? Do you simply have the Word? Or are you living as children who do the Word? Those who are his children, those who have responded in faith, those are the ones who respond to the Word in obedience. Those are his children. Let me pray for us. Father, thank you that you have made us your children when we respond to your Word. It's not just simply an intellectual belief, but in fact, it's a wholehearted belief that absorbs and responds and obeys. We would wish to be those people. As we look at the structure of John 1 to 18, that whole structure to identify who Jesus, your Son, is, and then to bring us into the family as brothers and sisters of Jesus with you as our Father, because we have responded and received the Logos, the Word in faith, and we obey it. We welcome it. Thank you, Lord, for each person who has done that. Would you give us a good Advent season as we look forward to the return of Jesus once again. Amen. And we'll see you next time.